All right, give you a quick update this time on my YouTube channel debut, which is delayed by a couple days. Lots of great racing news, even though it is the preseason. Tons of good gear stuff. I got a whole bunch. I might not even fit it all in this week, so let's get going.
This is Short Travel Magazine.
Short Travel Magazine.
Interesting tidbits. Curated just for you.
All right, we're going to start out this tidbits with some industry news, if you will. GT Bikes, GT Bicycles, who was one of the original higher end, if you will, BMX brands and mountain bike brands in the early 90s. They kind of, have fallen by the wayside. When's the last time you saw somebody riding a new GT? It's been a decade or more for me. So I was kind of excited to learn that while it's currently under PON, Cervelo, Santa Cruz, Cannondale, etc., it's under one of the divisions of PON. It is now going to be spun off into its own standalone division, which I believe is what Santa Cruz and Cervelo and Cannondale is. In other words, GT is going back to a standalone company, and they're moving their headquarters back to California, very close to where the original Gary Turner GT Bicycles was founded in California. So that's kind of cool. They've actually upped their employees from 8 to somewhere in the 20s, and they're going back to their off-road roots. Because the last time I looked at a GT bike catalog, it had kids' bikes and bike path cruisers. Of course, they've had actually fairly well-received gravel bikes and road bikes. So they are basically just another generic bike brand, much like what happened to Diamondback and all these other great brands. They're just kind of, who cares anymore? GT does still have a presence with the enduro trail bikes. They have a small team. I believe it's enduro, maybe even downhill. I don't know. I don't really keep track of that side of it. But I'm picturing some modern actual mountain bikes again, the kind you would actually see on a cross-country race course. And it would be cool since Santa Cruz and Cervelo both have presence in the world tour at the mountain bike level. Maybe a Team GT would be really cool again, because back in the early 90s, Team GT with Rishi Gruel, and they had some great, of course, Julie Furtado, I won't even have to mention her. They were one of the top teams in top bikes, and everybody thought they were great. Now, these were mainly hardtails. They're full suspension bikes. By the time they got kind of popular, they were more into the downhill. I don't really remember anybody actually racing on some of those. What were they, LTS designs? They were kind of weird frame designs back then. So I don't know. I just got me excited because my first real BMX bike, I believe it was in 79 or 80, maybe 81, was a GT back when it was, the real GT. And like all my other bikes back then, it was stolen out of my garage, and I've never had the pleasure of owning one since, so that's kind of a bummer. So good for GT in this weird time of the bike industry that they're actually kind of some positive news, which leads into some not so positive news. And of course, you've probably seen Shimano took a huge hit as far as profits go in 2023. I mean, the numbers are actually kind of scary. What is it, 40-50% down in their bike division? And that's not a huge surprise to me. I know they've got some nice products. There's plenty of big mountain bike teams and road teams running Shimano, but it really just, they haven't released anything new on the mountain bike side in so long. And I'm not talking about their cheap Q's 10 and 11 speed stuff. While it sounds like that's, great product for what it is, the XTR stuff has just been sitting I really thought another year, 24, these teams racing on this exact same group. Now, just because it's new doesn't mean it's better. I get that. SRAM keeps going and going and going. Doesn't mean their crap's any better either. But, innovation is in the eye of the beholder. What you innovate with is kind of what sets your marketplace, if you will. Are you a leader or are you a follower? And man, I would love to try something other than my current SRAM drivetrains, but XTR, I don't know. It just seems too old right now. That's a terrible, thing to think that something, just because it's not the absolute newest, that it's no good. It's great. I'm sure it's great, although people do have issues with all this stuff. So I'm not terribly surprised at a company. I haven't heard anything about SRAM. I've not heard any actual financials. I'm curious. Maybe I'll go look that up. That doesn't mean they've been doing super great. They could all be doing crap. Fox bike divisions were down quite a bit too. I think it said 43% was their revenue in the bike division, so that's not great to begin with. So I don't know exactly what's going on with those type of brands, but I would love to see kind of these lower prices stick around a while longer. I believe Planet Cyclery just sent out an email. They got the Cervelo full suspension. What are they? They got horrible names. I can't even remember what they are. X or ZFS or something. Whatever. The Santa Cruz Blur clones. The kind of mid-range build. Granted, it has alloy rims, but it's got the GX, I believe, transmission, and SID fork is $6,500, $6,400, I believe, give or take, and it's like $4,069, which is a pretty decent drop, and that actually puts it in about kind of where I think those bikes should be anyway, 4-ish. So if I didn't already have a bike that I'm happy with, I'd probably jump on that deal and just swap out a few components, and that would call it a day. Okay, that's enough of the boring industry stuff. One thing I wanted to mention, this could be part of the old school, but I'll just do it here. Charlie Cunningham, he's an old dude. He's one of the original founders of WTB. The company that makes the saddles and the tires, and actually a bunch of other stuff that most people don't even know about, grips, all kinds of stuff. He had a bike accident, and they're not sure even to this day, this was 6 or 7 years ago, what happened. They just kind of found him. He was able to get back up off his bike and get home, I believe, but he was either hit by a car or hit a deer, or they're not sure, but he has a serious brain injury that doesn't appear to be improving enough to where he has now been moved into assisted living type of a facility. And his wife, Jackie Phelan, who, this goes really far back, we're talking into the 80s, she was like the original queen of the mountain bike world. She raced and just was a great mountain bike kind of personality back in the day. That's his wife. She's been selling off things, trying to get some money together because of his costly care. It's $8,000 a month or something, which is completely believable, as I have kind of been looking into that stuff for my mother-in-law. These places per month are extremely, extremely expensive. Whether you have insurance or not, they don't cover it all. They don't cover certain parts of it. So anyway, if you just Google Charlie Cunningham, he's got a GoFundMe. He's had one up for a while, and I don't know. I don't generally partake in those type of GoFundMe things. It takes quite a lot, but that I can kind of relate to when she talks about how he's just been getting to the point where she can't take care of it anymore, and now she's selling off some of his kind of prized possessions. Kind of bummed me out. So if anybody's feeling generous, feel free to donate in any way you can to Charlie Cunningham and his family. What else? Zwift. I actually just canceled my Zwift subscription. Long story. I'll go into that some other day. But there's that finals. I don't know if you ever seen that on YouTube. These Zwift finals where they take, I believe it's like 100,000 people who start, and they whittle it down, and then they pick 3 male and 3 female riders to compete for a pro contract. It's a great little series. It used to be on GCN, and now it's, kind of an independent thing, but it's still around, and it's still enjoyable. So I was watching the 3 finalists of each. It's episode 1 and 2. I think there's 3. There's only 3 or 4. It's not a long series, but I enjoyed it last couple of years because you kind of get to see these people who are generally fairly young. There's occasionally a 30-year-old in there, but most of them are very early 20s. And you get to kind of watch them go through the paces. You got Canyon SRAM on the women's side, and Alpecin de Koenig, or whatever it's called nowadays, Phoenix something, Matthew Vanderpool's team. And, the actual coaches and directors of that team go through with these people, and they kind of evaluate them, and then they end up picking a winner, and they get pro contracts. It's wonderful. But something I particularly noticed this season, and I'm sure you would too, is these riders are riding and training and doing tests, and the entire, at least this is how I kind of interpreted, the entire exercise of picking these people was all about numbers. That's all any of them talked about. Their power numbers, their threshold numbers, their this numbers. And I don't remember seeing this, but they're poking them in the earlobe and taking blood drops right on the road, right in the middle of their training with a little machine. I'm assuming they're measuring blood oxygen or glucose or whatever, but they're actually poking these people's ears and then looking at the numbers. And then the racers, all they talk about, yeah, my numbers were this, my numbers were that. It looked absolutely depressing and miserable, to be honest. I cannot imagine doing that, riding and training, and only focused on these technical numbers. And, I've read people talking about that over the years, the pros saying how that's all anybody worries about anymore. And it was kind of depressing. Almost like, God, now granted, one was 19, the other ones were 22. When you're that age and you're got a shot at a pro team like that, you will do anything. I'm sure they're used to running numbers all day. They all have coaches. This is nothing new, but when you watch it and you realize that's really all they're discussing, not how did you feel, do you think you could have went harder, it was, no, I did this number for this amount of miles, and I should have done this number, and I would have been better if I did this. Like, oh my Lord, I would not want to be doing that. The other thing that caught my focus was how I can imagine all the doping scandals happen even now. Back in the day, these young athletes were quite literally at kind of the command of these directors and coaches that were analyzing them. I mean, I'd be like, hey, don't be poking my earlobe 10 times a day, all that stuff. So I can easily see how if you're on a pro team and your guy says, do this is what you need to do, this is what the whole team's doing, even though it's illegal and it's wrong. It just even became clearer why it was so easy for some of these riders to just do what they're told, because that seems to be like the environment they're in. They got a Matthew Vanderpool. I'm sure he has much more pull than your average rider on a team that nobody ever heard of. But I don't know. It's kind of a bummer. Kind of bum me out at the end. So I'll finish watching it, but if you get a chance to watch it, let me know what you think on that. Drop me an email or something. All right, that's enough about that. Let's do some quick racing stuff.
Racing news and views.
All right, preseason races are in full swing. First of all, the Tropical Challenge in Puerto Rico. That was something that just happened, and a couple of the big name American riders were there. You got Gwendolyn Gibson, Riley Amos, Christopher Blevins, and some Canadians. That just happened, and Blevins won. Amos Riley got third, and Martin Vidari. I don't even know how to say his name. He's got a very long name. My apologies to Martin. He got second. He was a big under 23 guy for the last year or two. So excellent. Gwen Gibson, I believe, won every race of the weekend. I think there was a short track and a regular race. So pretty good results. Now, it wasn't the toughest competition in the world, but just because it's in Puerto Rico and there aren't World Cup racers there doesn't mean that the other athletes are not super fast, because they are. Some from Brazil went over there, and so that's kind of cool. Now you have your Super Cup Masi, the Banyoles race that happened over the weekend. That one is online, and I have to give a little kudos to that series, the Masi Super Cup Masi series, because the announcers on there, I think it's Jose Hermida. It sounds like him. I didn't really look to see who it was, but he will do some Spanish announcing, for a minute or two, and then he will the same person will just do it in English. So it's much more tolerable to watch these live streams, and at least you have some idea kind of what's going on. So that would be a great way to do it more often. A lot of these just have only Spanish, and so I kind of have to hope I can recognize, when they say Yolanda Neff. Okay, well, I know I can tell the names of people, but I don't know. I thought that was really, really cool. I don't remember that last year so much. I didn't pay attention. But anyway, now that was much more like a World Cup. Victor Koretsky kind of killed everybody there by, good 30 seconds to a minute. Jordan Saru, Tituan Corrad, then, of course, Pauline, and her second race blew everybody away like she did in some of these other races in years past. So she's blown everybody away in her first two preseason. I don't know. She doesn't usually go that fast this early in the year when she's shooting, for the Olympics in July. So if this is any indication, she's going to be extremely tough to beat, I think, this year. Yolanda Neff, number 2, and Sevelia Blanc, my favorite U.S. women's rider right now. Not favorite because I like her over Haley Batten or any of these other women, just because she is on the tear at the moment. First and a bunch of thirds against really some absolute top-notch other racers. So that's cool. So far, we have to mention New Zealand, Anton Cooper, for his 9th national championship. 9 in a row. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's not easy to do at all. In the short track and the XCO, by the way, he's won both. And Samara Maxwell won hers, and she won in the elite, even though she is just coming out of is she still under 23? She's very, very young. I think she might actually be still under 23. I forget. So that's kind of cool. So far, it's been an excellent season. All kind of the usual players are at the front. So that's kind of a fun thing. Now, let's also talk about the Cape Epic coming up in March. That is one of my favorite races. Always an excellent week to look forward to. I work at home, and while I'm working, I have that going the full broadcast from start to finish off to the side on my laptop or a TV. And I don't know, it's just great. Makes me very psyched to get out and ride when that's on. And the weather's often kind of not so great here in March, but it kind of pushes me out the door. So this year, every year these teams switch around and whatnot. But Nino and Sebastian Finney, of course, I already mentioned that, I believe, last time, is going to be a great team. And Sebastian Finney is no slouch. And, of course, we all know where Nino stands. So that should be an interesting combination. I'm not saying I necessarily think they're going to blow everybody away, but just an interesting combination. Now, one that just kind of came through in the last day or so, this is for the U.S. riders, Alexis Scarda, who seems to be primarily a gravel rider right now. She does the Lifetime series, and she does quite well at it. Quite well. She's in the, I don't know, I'm not going to go look up her position. She was in the top 5, I believe. Maybe even 3rd. I don't know. She's really fast on a gravel bike. And she does enough cross-country stuff to do well in the Lifetime series in some of these longer, kind of more gravel-like races like, Schwamagan and the Sea Otter. Those are very long kind of races, not at all like short cross-country Olympics. So, her and Vera Lucer now. Vera Lucer's been doing the long marathon stuff for many years, so I think those two could do quite well. That's interesting. Alexis Scarda, who I would not picture wanting to do something like Cape Epic, is going to enter, so hats off to her. I can't wait to see what goes on there. Of course, Matt Beers was one of the, I believe they won it with Blevins, that team Specialized, or whatever they were called. And Blevins has already said he's not going to do Cape Epic. So Howard Grotts, who has won it before from Colorado, he's kind of stepped back for a few years. I believe it was a college thing, right? He was graduating at his college, and he's kind of back racing now, and he is fast. Like Cape Epic, he's up there. I mean, Leadville, he's up there. He could be an interesting companion. So I can't wait to see how that goes. I think this is going to be a fantastic group of teams this year at the Cape Epic. So more will probably be announced in the next couple of weeks as we get closer and closer. Although I would think that they've already determined. It's kind of surprised to see Alexis Scarda announcing now. I mean, that race is only a couple weeks away. You'd think you'd have to have that. Maybe she did plan it out earlier. Anyway, one last mention of racing. Sophia Waite, a U.S. junior I think she's under 23, even a junior maybe. She's very young. She's on BH, Coloma, I believe, out of Spain, which is kind of it's Valero's team. It's kind of a Spanish regional thing. I mean, you see them at the World Cups, but they're not, aside from Valero, you typically don't see them at the very, 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 very front. So I didn't even know that BH had a U.S. rider on any of their teams. And it's kind of cool because she actually just got 3rd, I believe, this weekend at one of these, at the Messi Bagnoles race. I believe. I could be wrong. But she is fast, and she's in some of their videos. They put out like kind of videos, and she's one of the few who speaks perfect English. So I don't know. I enjoy it. I'm going to be keeping an eye on her. I never even heard of her before. I may actually do a little interview with her in the next couple weeks because she seems like she really enjoys this type of racing. So that's it. I will say one last thing that has nothing to do with anything. Nobody matters. Miguel Indurain. Did I mention that last week? He's racing mountain bikes, a little more in his, I think he's not doing World Cups, but some of the more kind of stage racing and things like that. But he announced he's sponsored by Scott now, and he just showed his official mountain bike, and he's going full hardtail. Only hardtail for him, which I think is kind of cool. I don't know why. Kind of not surprising, a traditional road-only pro to me, it makes perfect sense. Hey, that doesn't mean he'll end up on one. You wait till he gets a few hundred miles of rough racing. Suddenly he's on a spark like Nino. So anyway, that's it for racing news. It's kind of getting really good now in the next couple weeks. So let's talk very quickly a couple gear things and then we'll wrap this one up.
Changing gears. More new stuff we don't really need.
Electronic suspension, that's where we're going right off the bat. Öhlins, the shock maker for Team BMC, Jordan Saru, already has, in fact, he had it on his bike this weekend, a fully electronic fork and rear shock system. I didn't see any wires coming out of it like the Pinarello Suntour system. And I didn't see any battery on the fork, which is interesting because I did see what looked like a battery on the rear shock where the shock meets the frame towards the pointing towards the head tube. You can see what looks like a removable battery of some kind. But the fork just looked like a normal fork. So they must have shoved a battery down into either the left or right tube. And interesting. So I didn't see that coming. They just kind of announced the cross-country fork as officially being for sale. And it's 1,500 and something grams. I believe at 120 travel. But that is not super heavy. That actually is much lighter kind of than I expected for a company like Öhlins. Cost a fortune. No shock there. I think it's $1,500 or $1,600 for just the fork. So that rules it out for pretty much anybody out there, the normal folk, if you will. So of course you got Pinarello, why can't I say that? And Suntour. You got Öhlins. Foxes have the live valve, but I haven't seen any cross-country people using that. Really, I mean, I haven't seen anybody, at least in a while, have that on their bike. And then, of course, the flight attendant, which is already seems to be ready to go at any time. I would imagine in the next month or so, that's going to be full-on released because it already looks finished. It's on virtually every SRAM rider's bikes this last weekend, if not everybody. In fact, I think everybody that I saw did have it. Now that leaves Manitou, who hasn't even been able to get their new cross-country products officially released. They're still like prototype-looking graphics. It seems to be taking quite a long time on that, but you know, at least they're in the game. So just as soon as they get that out, everybody else will be on electronic suspension, and then they'll have to kind of go for the I don't want any more electronic crowd, and buy a few years maybe until they can get something. So that's definitely the way of the future. There's absolutely no doubt. There hasn't been any doubt ever since Flight Attendant came out, in my opinion, that's where we're going. But I did not see Öhlins coming out so quickly with that. That's kind of interesting. Speaking of Manitou, Rock Rider Race 940S, the official high-end bike that team, Decathlon Ford team, is using, is officially for sale. And no Manitou suspension on there, which is kind of a bummer. It would be really cool to buy a replica bike. I'm assuming they're going to do that if the Manitou stuff isn't ready, although they could throw a current generation Manitou R7 or whatever they're using. I don't get. That's kind of the whole draw to me to those bikes, is that they're using unusual components compared to everybody else. Throw a TRP drivetrain on there, throw a Manitou fork, throw some TRP brakes, do it a little different. So that's actually officially available. The prices on them, honestly, didn't look particularly great. So at least that's finally out now. Let's talk about Lucas Schwartz Power. I get it. I know everybody calls him that, Schwartz Power. He released pictures of his new bike, and it's kind of a weird, ugly paint color. It doesn't go with his purple outfit, which, by the way, they have changed their purple outfits. They're a little different this year, a little more kind of light purple. But something that caught my eye is the Time XC12 pedals he has on his bike now. I don't remember him or anybody else using those pedals at the World Cup level. SRAM bought Time a few years ago, and I thought, oh, finally they're going to have, like Shimano, not only drivetrain, they'll have some pedals. I mean, it seems like a kind of an obvious choice. I thought they might buy HT pedals, which is what everybody else seems to be using if they're not on Shimano or Crank Brothers like Yolanda Neff. So maybe SRAM is going to release the Time XC12 pedals, and maybe they're going to rebrand them as SRAM pedals. I don't know, but it seems like that is going to happen because pedals are a personal thing, and to see some World Cup people now using them, interesting. I mean, they were quite popular back in the 90s when they first came out. They were a different design entirely from SPDs. They were more like Crank Brothers kind of, where they have these two big kind of loops. But they don't seem to have changed them. It looks exactly the same design. So that's kind of cool. What else? Let's talk a little about the SRAM Axis, the new pod. There is a fifth design. That's right. They have currently 4 versions of the controller pods. Well, the pods are what they call the new style that go with the transmission. I bought one immediately when they first came out because I thought, I bet these 2 individual buttons would be really nice instead of the big flapper thing, paddle as they call it. And I lasted about a week and returned it. Went back to the big paddle. The little buttons, I just couldn't quite get in a position that I liked. So there's 2 versions of that new pod with 2 different kind of button designs. I only had the cheaper one, but there is a 5th, and they've already had plenty of photos of it. It basically is the new pod shape, where it's kind of small and compact, and it's on kind of a much skinnier little arm that you can rotate under the bars. When I say rotate, I mean not in the normal direction of kind of up or down, but hard to describe. But they have gone back to the kind of original, very original paddle design, where it's got a little nubbin that you can reach around with your index finger and shift that third way. And that, to me, is the whole reason I kept the original Axis controllers, because I absolutely fell in love with the ability to use my index finger like you could in the old Shimano days. Maybe you can still do that with the Shimano. I don't know. It's been so long since I had a Shimano shifter. I don't even remember. So that's kind of cool. Now that also is ready to go. I mean, it's got the graphics on it. It looks completely ready to go. Nino, of course, used it last year in a bunch of races. Like midway through the year, he already had that on his bike, even though nobody was talking about it. So I look forward to that, because the extra ability to rotate that kind of in the vertical plane might just be the ultimate way to get that thing positioned, not only left and right, up and down, but even rotate it to kind of match your finger angle. So that's cool. That should be out. I'm guessing all this stuff's going to come out before the Olympics. What else? A couple other quick things. Trek, I'm curious if they have some new version of the Super Caliber coming already. No, I mean, 24 was a new year. Came out last year officially. But Riley Amos had some Instagram posts where he was kind of blocking out parts of the bike. And they only, do that when something new is coming. And if you look at the bikes they're racing, they're the exact same bikes that they raced on last year. Same colors, same graphics. They generally do change that stuff. So I would not also be surprised if they change something up, maybe for the first World Cup in Brazil, and all of a sudden there is some tweak, even if it's just a different shock. They're not. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, because that's the bike I have my eye on. It kind of matches what I would use a cross-country bike for better than others, as I do a lot of kind of gravel and pavement riding on mine. So interesting to see. I can't wait to see what else is going to change come April with the Brazil World Cups as far as bikes go. I can't afford any of them, and half these companies sound like they're half out of business anyway, so who knows? Maybe they'll just keep everything the same. What else? I think that's long enough for now. I think we will save it, some of these other ones, for next week. While I'm here, I do want to mention the YouTube channel debut. I've already actually shot some, and I'm kind of finalizing the format of it. I don't want to do the same stuff everybody else does, but so I don't want to just throw it out there and then start over again in a month. So bear with me a little bit. I think you will enjoy what I have coming as far as just new stuff to watch on YouTube relating to cross country and bikes and gear and racing and stuff. So hang in there. It's almost ready. My goal might be to finish podcasts with episode 25. I plan on still doing them. If I don't do something separate, I will just do the video, kind of a transcript like Joe Rogan does. If you've ever seen him, he posts the podcast and parts of the video. So I'm not sure, but it's going to be exciting. March 1st is my goal. It's about a couple days away here to have something running. So let's see what happens. All right, off we go. See you next time.
Thank you ever so much for listening to Short Travel Magazine.